What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 6 Prime Points show here on RotoGrinders. I am Brit Devine, joined once again by my host, Graham Barfield, by Jake.
I think we lost Brit here.
It sounds like we lost Brit. Brit was going through some technical difficulties before the show. He did lose power. So, looks like I'm sure he'll be back shortly. Graham, I know what Brit was going to ask us. He was going to talk about our takeaways from last week. You have any big takeaways from week 5?
Yeah, quite a few. Obviously, what a awful week from injuries. My goodness, man, just absolute bloodbath across the NFL. I mean, I think that's like kind of the starting point of this week is just like trying to figure out once again these cheaper running backs. So as the week progresses, that's what we're gonna try to be figuring out. My main thing I want to talk about this week, is kind of some quarterbacks looking like they're back to where we expected. Justin Fields, obviously, two great matchups against the Broncos and Commanders, but absolutely just wipes them, completely wipes them, looks back. They're introducing play action and designed rush attempts back into the offense, which is what we were missing in the first couple of weeks of the season. Fields off play action has been fantastic so far last couple of weeks. And, I think this is just sharp from Getsy, just funnel the ball to DJ Moore, run off play action. Fields is 15 of 20 for 182 yards and 2 scores off play action the last 2 weeks. He also has 9 designed rush attempts after having basically just 9 in his first couple of starts, Jake. I think you've got a couple quarterbacks too that you're looking at that look like they're back here. It's an injury riddled landscape across the fantasy verse. It's nice to get some quarterbacks back healthy here.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see QB play picking up a bit. Derek Carr looks fully healthy again. He had 6 deep pass attempts on Sunday. That was 3rd among all quarterbacks. That's probably bad news for Alvin Kamara, but it is great news for Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, who, by the way, Olave, 2nd in the NFL in total air yards. And if you just look at the Saints' first 3 games, he averaged 19 expected fantasy points per game. And really, I think the Saints' first 3 games are kind of the only games that are relevant if we're looking at the rest of the season, given that Carr was hurt in week 4, and then they had that total blowout in week 5. Don't sell Olave at this point. Big games are coming. I think he's still a pretty strong DFS value. Usage is fantastic with a healthy Derek Carr. And of course, Joe Burrow also looking healthy again through the first 4 weeks. Joe Burrow was getting the ball out faster than any other quarterback. And then in week 5, he settled back into what looked like normal Joe Burrow. He's moving around well in the pocket, posted a 2.48 second time to throw, which is roughly in line with his career average. He had a 10-yard run in there. He was also responsible for 20 first downs, which is 37% of his total first downs this season. And if Joe Burrow is back, he's going to end up being a very strong DFS value this week, which is something that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. And on Olave and the Saints, man, Olave just missed on a huge game. Carr and Olave just missed on like a 40-yard bomb up the sideline. I think Olave couldn't get a second foot down. And then there's a touchdown that Olave couldn't get a second foot down too. So, I mean, Olave could have had a 2-score game last weekend. You want to transition over, Jake?
Yeah, I think we can move on.
DFS talk here.
I think we need to cover our stands here first, Graham.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. It's for first time hosting, a little rough, but we're gonna get it all figured out here. So my big stand this week is that I want to take a huge stand in DFS on the 4th highest total game of the week. I already teased, one of the quarterbacks. He's back in this game, and yeah, this is a game that I am going to be all over in DFS, assuming things hold. Obviously Tuesday, a little early to make some sweeping conclusions here, but man, I'm pretty in love with this game so far. Graham, what about you?
Yeah, this is so Chargers, Cowboys, obviously off the main slate. We got Chiefs, Broncos off the main slate, both in the primetime slots. Both of those games were the 2 fastest games in terms of like pace plays and pass rate in my game model this week. A lot of really just middling games this week. And I think this season has just been all about just nailing running back value, right? Like last week, it was like, if you didn't have Brees, you probably didn't make any money. This week, I think there's 2 running back values. It's Tuesday, but there's 2 of them that stand out to me the most. We'll get through those here in just a few moments. Jake, we should first real quick talk through last week and just kind of like what we saw. I just want to talk, not to kind of just take this off the rails a second. We're going to wait for Brit to maybe get back online, but I just want to talk through last week and just what worked in terms of lineup builds. And last week, in the last couple of weeks, I think the by and large, we've just seen, running backs just get piled onto. Like, you, Scott, and I were talking on Friday, and we were like, yeah, David Montgomery is the best running back play on the slate. He should be 35% owned. At the time, he was projecting for like 20%. Everybody piled on. At the same time, Breece Hall was projecting to be pretty contrarian. Then he got steamed up. This week, we got McCaffrey back on the main slate, Jake. But running back is it's like a big, long, flat tier after McCaffrey. So just structurally, like, what is your initial leans? You went through the DFS early look, as you always do, at fantasypoints.com, free article. Everybody should check it out. But what's your initial lean just on running back builds this week?
Yeah, it's a really interesting slate. I think especially because we could have a lot of cheap value open up. We saw Emery DeMercado dominate Arizona Cardinals running back usage after James Conner went down. That's something that I think we'll talk a bit more about later. He's only 4,900. So that could certainly be a value. Jeff Wilson could potentially come back from IR here. That could open things up. Just on its own, Raheem Mostert at 6,400 looks pretty great. I think this is a tough slate from a running back perspective, especially because I'm not even sure if I really want to pay up for Christian McCaffrey in like one of the worst possible matchups against Cleveland. I mean, the total's super low there. I'm curious on if you have any hard takes on the running back position this week.
Yeah, McCaffrey is obviously going to be like a bellwether, try to, decision point, kind of inflection point this week. Browns have been very good on the whole against the run. They're giving up the fourth fewest yards per carry, but they have given up a few explosive runs, fifth most explosive gains of 15 or more yards. It'll be interesting to see if they get Elijah Mitchell back too in this spot. I mean, McCaffrey is obviously playing like one of the best players in the NFL, like obviously not just the best running back in the NFL, but just an incredible player and an incredible role. It'll be interesting to see if they get Mitchell back, but even if they don't, he plays like a reduced role again. I mean, McCaffrey's getting 85% of the snaps, Jake. He's averaging like 26 half-point PPR points per game. It's prime McCaffrey once again. He's the right price. He's going to be 10K, I think, in a couple weeks. It'll be really interesting to see where ownership comes out, because I think, in terms of groupthink, there's going to be a lot of just like, hey, McCaffrey's 9,500. I've got all these running backs in the 6K range. Let's shy away from McCaffrey. I was just going to say, I would imagine people would probably lean more towards playing a guy like Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp at that price, especially if a ton of running back value opens up, like we mentioned. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We got, every single week we're going to be deciding between Tyreek and Kupp. Kupp looked all the way back. Let's talk about that real quick. In this Rams receiver situation, I think we kind of nailed that on our show on Friday. It's like, both these guys are top 15 plays. Kupp got 5 catches on the first drive, then got 3 more, I think, for the entire game. They switched up their coverage scheme and realized, hey, we probably can't just play off coverage against this guy. But still, I mean, Nakua gets there. Kupp this week, though, he's right back up to 9K. Cardinals obviously getting slammed against all opposing receivers. What's your read on Nakua versus Kupp this week?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I mean, I sort of wrote it up last week as back in what was it 2019, the Rams, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods averaged just over 40 fantasy points per game combined. And I sort of said, I think we're looking at something very similar here between Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, but a much tighter spread. So probably closer to around 20 fantasy points per game for both guys for the remainder of the season, which is obviously awesome. And that makes me want to just lean into the cheaper guy this week, which is Nacua. At the same time, though, I do think your stat that Kupp had 5 targets on the first drive is extremely interesting, given that teams spend a lot of time scheming their first drive, the first 10, first 15 plays. So that could indicate that maybe they do want to get a little more designed usage going Cooper Kupp's way, but we'll probably need a few more weeks of data to be able to really make a big decision there. Graham, I was curious, like one of the things that Britt wanted to talk about today and hopefully we can get him back on it at some point, was, what is this Vikings offense going to look like without Justin Jefferson? And this was something that I sort of dove into. He went down at the 12-minute mark of the fourth quarter in week 5, and Minnesota was playing from behind. So that forced him into a lot of 11 personnel, which led to Brandon Powell earning a 75% route share. And he actually tied with Jordan Addison for the team lead in first read targets. But we have to remember that Powell throughout his career has mostly been a special teams guy, which makes me think they're going to lean more into 2 tight end sets. And that's exactly what we've seen so far this season, especially when they're leading or tied. We've seen Jordan Addison, who's a pretty strong wide receiver 3, only average a 57% route share. But when Minnesota falls behind, Addison's route share jumps to 72%. And those extra routes that he's gaining when they fall behind comes at the expense of Minnesota's tight end 2, Josh Oliver. So that's basically a very long-winded way of saying that Minnesota, as long as they can, maintain leads, keep games close, they're probably going to lean a lot more into these 2 tight end sets. I would imagine they prefer a guy like Josh Oliver out there on the field relative to Brandon Powell. And that probably means they end up running the ball a bit more. But so that's sort of like broad strokes, how it impacts the offense for the next, 4 weeks or whenever Justin Jefferson ends up returning. That said, for week 6, I mean, you can make a great argument that every single Minnesota wide receiver is underpriced. Even Brandon Powell, I mean, he's only 3,000. Even if we project him for a 40 or 50% route share, he can do quite a bit after the catch. So I think that's pretty interesting. But I know, Graham, that you probably have no interest in these Minnesota running backs, even if we do think they're going to go a little more run heavy with Jefferson out.
Yeah, I don't, man. I really don't. And, last week, actually the last 2 weeks, we've seen Madison's role kind of start to dwindle. The whole entire reason anybody liked Alexander Madison this season for fantasy was because we thought he's going to get this crazy good bell cow role.
Yep.
Nope. They brought in Cam Akers, 69% snap share in week 4, 51% snap share last week. Madison, obviously got there with the receiving touchdown for fantasy last week against the Chiefs, man. But yeah, significant role reduction coming. I think this will probably end up being some sort of committee. Madison will be the split, lead of the split, I think. But your point on Addison is really interesting. I mean, Osborne and Cousins have so much chemistry together, but
yeah,
I mean, Osborne just stinks. I think at this point, it's just like he's just can't get vertical like Addison can. Before we move on here, Jake, before we get to next segment, I want to talk real quickly on what to do with this Bears running back situation. Obviously, it's Tuesday. We know for sure Khalil Herbert isn't going to play, but I think Roschon Johnson, just sticking in the same game, Roschon Johnson's going to catch a lot of ownership if he can clear a concussion protocol. 4,600 on DraftKings. Travis Homer, I think, is dealing with an injury too, man. So it literally might just be Kari Blasingame, who's technically really a fullback, and Roschon Johnson in the backfield here. So once again, value running back might pop up in Roschon Johnson. I'm sure we'll know more by Thursday and Friday, but just curious for your thoughts. I mean, this could be one of these games where, like, no Justin Jefferson, sure, takes some of the steam out of it, but there's a lot of pieces to like in this game, and they're all cheap. Roschon could be another one here.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. And I think especially, these Bears running backs, offenses with hypermobile quarterbacks are always the most efficient rushing attacks, including, just the carries from their running backs. And one of the big obstacles for Bears running backs this season has been volume. But, Roschon this week could be one of the first Bears running backs to, hit that 15 touch mark, which, could pretty easily lead to 100 total yards, given how efficient this ground game has been. I'm with you. I think this is a pretty sneaky game, but the game that I teased earlier that I think is by far my favorite this week is Seattle against Cincinnati. Just from a matchup perspective, I think this game is absolutely awesome. DK Metcalf dominated man coverage last year. The Bengals run man coverage at the league's 8th highest rate. Kenneth Walker is seeing top 5 red zone usage among running backs, and he just earned the 5th highest route share of his career last week. Joe Mixon averages 20.1 fantasy points per game as a home favorite, and Burrow is way too cheap. He's the second cheapest he's been since week 16 of 2021, and Burrow's 9% cheaper than his average DraftKings salary last year. I think there's a ton of great angles on this game. The Seattle pass defense has been absolutely abysmal. They're the top schedule-adjusted matchup for opposing wide receivers and a top 10 schedule-adjusted matchup for opposing quarterbacks. I would imagine, Burrow and the Cincinnati side is going to be chalky, but overall, I just really love game stacks here, especially on a cheap Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Burrow's still too cheap. I was kind of hoping we would kind of get like another down game from Burrow and that we can really like unload
Yeah.
on him in here in this spot. But yeah, 6,300. He's too cheap. I think he's going to end up being, 10, 12, 13% in large field tournaments. Before we transition out of some DFS talk, we'll go into some of the fantasy points tools here in a second, Jake. But 2 running backs I want to talk about before we get out of here. Raheem Mostert, obviously, this week. No Devon Achane, unfortunately, has some sort of knee injury that's going to require him to miss multiple weeks. The last 3 weeks with Achane, kind of coming of age in a new role, it was a true split on early downs. The duo was splitting snaps. They were splitting in terms of expected fantasy points in between the 20s. However, though, Jake, Devon Achane was 60% snap share inside the 20 to Mostert's 40%. So this is a huge boost for Mostert's touchdown upside. Obviously, last week he got into the end zone once again, but Achane was already getting the majority of the role inside the red zone. Jeff Wilson is due back off of IR this week. He had some sort of ribs and hand injuries, but again, he might need to be ramped up. This is looking like, Mostert's backfield. I think he's going to end up being one of the chalkiest running back plays on the slate. But just like last week with Montgomery, just like last week with Breece Hall, you got to get the chalk backs right. And I think Mostert will be one of them. And to that point, Jake, it'll be interesting to see where Kyren Williams' ownership comes in vis-a-vis Mostert. I mean, Kyren, once again, 84% of the snaps last week. Rams kind of got out to Eagles got out to a quick lead, and Rams really couldn't run the ball. Obviously, a horrible spot last week too against the Eagles' elite run defense. Kyren gets the Cardinals this week. Should get plenty of dump offs too. This is a game environment we typically want to pick on running back. So I'm interested to see where Kyren's ownership comes in vis-a-vis Mostert.
I would imagine Mostert's gonna,
Yeah.
draw almost all of that ownership, especially given just how productive this Dolphins backfield has been. They're averaging 11 more. Dolphins running backs are averaging 11 more fantasy points per game than the next closest group of running backs, which is the 49ers. Yeah, just absolutely insane. And I'm with you on Kyren. I think he could be a really sneaky play here. I mean, 19.8 expected fantasy points through the first 4 weeks. Elite usage, still isn't really coming off the field much at all. He'll be an interesting way to gain some leverage on Mostert in a similar price range. You want to transition here, Graham? I think we got to do the Ticketmaster read before we move on to the fantasy points tools.
That's right. More memories are made when you're there for live NFL action, Jake. And when you need tickets, Ticketmaster has you covered. It is the official marketplace of the NFL, and Ticketmaster gets you more ways to find your perfect seat. I like using their seat map quite a bit, even if I'm, just perusing seats. They have a 360-degree preview. And if your plans change, Ticketmaster does give you the flexibility to buy or sell or transfer your tickets beforehand. Plus, mobile tickets make getting in on game day a breeze, and you can even customize your Ticketmaster app to rep your team's colors. Jake, I can't deny, I want Jags colors all over my phone, so it's very easy to change my app to Jags. Find your tickets at Ticketmaster.com/NFL today. Yeah, Jake, let's go into some of the greatest tools in the universe, the best fantasy football tools in the universe. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
We'll get this going here. Just 1 second.
Yeah, I know one thing that we're going to talk about today that I think is arguably one of the most powerful ways to use the fantasy points data suite is just how do we pull player usage after a guy gets hurt? Say a specific player got hurt at this point in the game, and you want to look at the rest of his position group after that injury occurred. With any other set of tools that I can think of, that either isn't possible or it's extremely difficult. With the fantasy points data suite, that's pretty easy to do. So we're here in the bell cow report, and if you set the week to week 5, we are going to look at the Arizona Cardinals backfield usage after James Conner went down. So I believe you'll need to change the team to Arizona.
Yep. In there.
And then
what time did he go down again?
So he went down 20 minutes into the game. So if you go to game time elapsed,
yep,
and then just set the min to 20 minutes, then we will be able to see Arizona's backfield usage after James Conner went down. And it's important to keep in mind, like, context is very important here. Keontae Ingram did not play in this game.
I think this is not pulling for me correctly. Let's see, 20-minute. Does that look right? Custom?
Yeah, that does look correct.
Weird.
But if it takes a little too long, I can just cover it on my own. But DeMarcado, after James Conner went down, played 100% of the snaps, earned 10 carries, 3 targets out of the backfield. Might need to maybe reset and just try pulling again. Is Graham frozen? Am I the last one here?
I think so, Jake.
All right. Well, we maybe we'll just Graham's on the screen share, so maybe we'll just end up skipping the fantasy points tools for right now, and then I can handle the rest of the show. But yeah, that is overall a really great way to pull player usage. If you know the exact timestamp that a player got hurt, you can just simply scroll down to the time elapsed part of the fantasy points data suite, and then look at positional usage after that. But we're going to get a little bit into picks here, since we cut that segment a little short. So I know Brit is all over Javonte Williams under 38.5 rushing yards. He also loved San Francisco -4. I think that might be out to -5 in most places. So just wanted to cover Brit's picks because he is such an outstanding bettor. Hey Graham, what's going on?
Oh my gosh, dude, this is unbelievable. It's like Murphy's Law tonight. I don't know what happened to my internet there. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, man. I just fast forwarded us straight to betting picks this week. So I already covered some of Brit's picks. I figured people would want to hear those because Brit's just been absolutely killing NFL betting so far this year. He heavily highlighted Javonte Williams under 38.5 rushing yards, which I think makes a ton of sense. We've seen Jaleel McLaughlin look great so far. A few of his other picks, Detroit -3. Think they're getting a little disrespected in the betting market. I totally line up with that. And he's also got the Chargers +2.5. I thought that was a little interesting. I believe they're playing Dallas on Monday night, if I remember correctly. So Graham, what are some of your betting picks this week?
Yeah, I'm also on Lions 3. I think Britt would say that line makes no sense. The Lions are a Super Bowl team, a Super Bowl contending team. Bucks obviously coming out of their bye, but 3 is a little light for Detroit in this spot, especially given how good Jared Goff is playing. So I'm also on Lions 3. I'm also on Jags at 4. I think this is going to get to 4.5 to 5. I think this line is a little bit of disrespect to Trevor Lawrence. And the main reason I'm playing it is because I think Trevor Lawrence is just overdue for a really nice game. By all the advanced numbers at fantasy points data, Lawrence's accuracy numbers in a clean pocket, all of like the static, super predictive metrics, Lawrence looks fantastic. He's just gotten really unlucky, Jake. Like we saw it again last week. He had 2 fumbles on the doorstep of the red zone. Obviously, those are plays that Lawrence has to clean up. But week 2, it was the red zone miscues. Week 3 and 4, they had a bunch of drops. It's like, just if we can get one of these games where the Jags offense gets everything right, they're overdue to put up like 35 points. And we don't really talk too much about Jags in the DFS segment. We'll talk more about that on our show, Jake, on Friday, I'm sure. But Trevor Lawrence and their pass catchers look fantastic. I mean, the Colts boundary corners have not been good at all season. It's early in the week, man. I only have those 2 early looks. I do have one bet, though, that I'm on. I'm going to give this out in our Discord here shortly. Britt's on Javonte Williams under, so am I. I'm taking Javonte Williams under total yards at 53.5 at Bet Rivers. I think this is an insanely high number of total yards for him. Samaje Perine is going to get the passing down role. There's a chance Jaleel McLaughlin gets the early down role in most of it. Javonte has not been a super explosive playmaker this season. So you can take the under on the rushing yards. It makes a ton of sense. 38.5 still out there. It's going to get hammered down. I'm going to take the over on total yards, Javonte Williams. Not a lot of props out yet, but we do have 2 games out between Chiefs and Broncos, and the London game, Ravens and Titans. Jake, you want to talk through some pick'ems here real quick?
Yeah. Well, first, let me get to my betting picks, and also just wanted to echo what you said on Javonte Williams. I think right now the market's making a pretty big mistake, sort of pricing him as if Jaleel McLaughlin hasn't emerged as a real backfield threat. Combined with the fact that Williams himself is coming off an injury here, there's a lot of potential for him to go under his props. But for my bets, love Las Vegas -3 against New England, can get -112 over at DraftKings. New England 3 points over their last 2 games. I mean, their offense can't do anything. Obviously, hard to have a ton of confidence in Vegas, but I do think they're a notably better team than the Patriots. And then, of course, if I'm going to be all over Seattle, Cincinnati for DFS, I got to love the fact that FanDuel is the only sports book hanging 44.5 right now. Love the over there. Every other book is at 45.5. I would expect this to close around 46. And we have Brit back. Brit, we were just talking about our bets. I already mentioned a few of yours because I know our viewers are eager to get your winning picks. But if you just wanted to give your reasoning behind your picks, I'm sure people would love that.
Yeah, some giant fire in the town. Everything. It's weird looking outside, and it's just complete darkness. It's so dark up here in the Northeast right now, and then there's literally no lights on in anyone's house. I got a text that said power's not going to be back on until 1 a.m. There's no cell service. But somehow it's back on. I'm able to get back on. They were able to get it working. But yeah, did you touch on the Lions at all? Because they're by far, this is like the most ridiculous line I think I've seen all season. Graham, I think you were on this as well, or was this Jake?
Yeah, no, I was too. I gave some reasoning, but go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's just straight disrespectful to the Lions to give them 3 points against the Buccaneers, who they beat Minnesota when Minnesota turned the ball over 500 times in that first game. They beat I have this all up on Scores and Odds if my computer it's still rebooting some of the things here, but it's just Tampa Bay I think they've gotten very, very lucky to be 3-1, and the Lions are legitimately like a top 3 or 4 team in the league. And I know the Buccaneers, they're at home, they're off bye, but there's no way when these super teams, and I think the 49ers, would be considered one of them right now. I almost want to put the Lions. They're not up there with them, but they're a complete team on offense and defense. I don't care about teams off bye. I don't care about the road. They're going to come in and they're going to smoke the Buccaneers. And so who was doing the hosting this? I feel like I missed out. I was in total darkness, no cell service. I was trying to watch, couldn't do anything. What else? Whoever was hosting, why don't you just keep rolling with it?
We were kind of co-hosting, and then Brett, I was about to go through the tools, and then I lost internet and left Jake abandoned.
This is ridiculous.
Was this is the Murphy Law show here in week 6. But we've had a great time.
It's been fun.
I sent the red flag to our lead supervisor Devin, and he was like, "They're doing great, so don't worry about it." I'm like, I'm not really worried about you too. But yeah, let's get the screen share back up here. And Jake, you wanted to bring up basically, you want to talk about the James Conner role. He's going to be out, and there's some of these backup running backs. I don't know if you guys talked on them at all, but you wanted to know, hey, where's the spot? How can I find out for relatively inexpensive in the DFS world when somebody goes out? What did that look like? And you can do that on the Fantasy Points data tool. I know it was free for everybody last week. Hopefully some of those guys signed up this week, but I've got pulled up on the screen here, and I'll try to make it bigger for everybody that we can see using the filters. If you're watching live, you go to week 5, there's a team filter in the filters. You go to Arizona, and then all the way, there's a time elapsed. You just change that to 20 minutes. Jake said 20 minutes. That's when James Conner got hurt. And you can see after that point, Amari DiMercato literally played every snap for the Cardinals. There is some circumstances where that might not be the case this week. But Jake, what do you want to delve into the situation?
Yeah. So a question that I've gotten quite a bit on Twitter is, when I'm writing my articles, how exactly am I pulling player usage for a position group after, an individual player in that group gets injured? And this is exactly how I'm simply finding, the timestamp where the player got hurt. James Conner got hurt right around the 10-minute mark of the second quarter, which is 20 minutes into the game. And then I'm, filtering down to see backfield usage from that point. Now, it's important to remember context, obviously extremely important with any data pull. Keontae Ingram was inactive for this game. He logged some limited practices last week, decent chance that he manages to play this week. So we could see this being more of a committee, but there's also a world where Ingram doesn't play, and we can project DeMercado for pretty close to a bell cow workload at a $4,900 DraftKings price tag, which is pretty great. Obviously, the Cardinals did just pick up Tony Jones, but Tony Jones isn't a guy that I'm particularly worried about, given that he's bottom 10 in yards per carry since 1970. That's an absolutely insane stack. Tony Jones, very bad at football. So yeah, this is how you pull player usage after another player in their position group gets hurt. Fantasy points data makes this extremely easy. I really can't figure out another way to do this using anything else. I think this is one of the most underrated parts of our tool set here.
Yeah, I had no idea you could do this. I would assume 99% of people who probably even have a fantasy points data subscription don't even know they could do it. So it's great to be able to know that it is possible. Graham, I wanted to talk to you, the O-line, D-line chart, maybe go over a couple of matchups here. It looks like the Dolphins, no surprise. Once again, what do we think? Did you touch on the backfield when I was gone? How do we think that's going to break down this week?
Yeah, we briefly did. Yeah, once again, amazing spot for Dolphins backfield, man. I mean, not just, great scheme by Mike McDaniel, but they've got, two backs that are, generating yards before contact. But yeah, with no Devon Achane this week, I was noting that, Achane was getting 60% of the snaps in the red zone compared to Mostert's 40% over the last 3 weeks. So, big spike in touchdown equity coming for Mostert. Great spot. I mean, just obviously another great spot. But I want to talk through two matchups at the bottom. Britt, if you want to scroll down to the bottom, or there you go, flip it to the rush grade. 49ers have obviously one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They have one of the best schemes in the NFL. But look at this. They have the sixth worst matchup this week on the ground, according to Fantasy Points data. And that's just a huge credit to the Browns front seven. Browns are playing this like wide nine front scheme. They're getting Myles Garrett all over the place, lining him up over the 3 or lining him outside at the 7. He's been all over the place and obviously a huge part of their run game's success. That being said, though, I mean, Christian McCaffrey in this Niners run game is definitely, on another level right now. And one more, Britt, though, I did want to talk through, and they kind of just have a middling rush grade this week, is the Jets. We're going to have to make a lot of choices about Breece Hall this week against the Eagles. Eagles run defense is elite. This number to me is a little high. We can't account for injuries in our data. Elijah Vera Tucker, though, is the Jets' best run blocking offensive lineman, their tackle. He's out for the season. Unfortunately, another Achilles tear, just super unlucky for the Jets. This is a really, really tough spot here for the Jets without Vera Tucker. Eagles run defense is awesome. Britt, what's your lean on Breece Hall to start this week? Where's your head out there?
It's tough. So I've had limited time to sort of go over some of these things, but I don't know, that 6K tier, right? You've got Kyron Williams against Arizona. You're going to have Mostert. You're going to have Breece Hall. There's who else is in here? DeAndre Swift. Like I think Breece Hall's he's just another talent level above Swift, but Swift's role is pretty good right now. That's going to be a tough decision point, I think, for a lot of people. It's Tuesday. I don't think anyone knows exactly what they're doing currently.
Yeah.
I just want heads up, the lights are flickering, guys. So I may disappear in just a minute here. All right. So what did you guys get to on the bets? Did you each give some of yours? What else did you talk of mine? Where are we in terms of all of that?
Yeah, we both covered our picks, and then I sort of gave a quick overview of your bets. I know you're big on the Javonte Williams under, so if you want to give the people some reasoning there.
But before we do, we got to pay the bills here. So let me tell you about our friends over at Ticketmaster.
We actually already
we covered you there.
You guys,
Yeah,
we
we
got
got
you.
What is this? Look at this. You guys are true professionals. I did not expect you guys to do that. All right. This is fun doing a show with two very well-versed co-hosts as well. So yeah, Javonte Williams. So maybe I'll bring it up on Scores and Odds for you guys to read what I wrote here. I think the line is still 38.5. It was trending. It was down to 36. Someone out there bet it back up to 38. So we should be very thankful for them of that. But it's just, it's too high, right? Because he's in a touch squeeze. So I don't know. There's no allegiance from Sean Payton to Javonte Williams coming off an injury, to start the season, coming off another injury now. Why would they not give, if a guy led the NCAA in rushing for his career? First, how does this guy go undrafted? And then he gets into the NFL. You would think the guy that led all of college ever in rushing for a career would know something about running the football. And what does McLaughlin come in and do? He's run for over 7 yards a carry. I don't know if Williams runs the ball 10 times in this game. The Chiefs defense is pretty good. There's a little bit of weather in this game. So maybe they run the ball a little more. But I don't know. I think the Chiefs win this pretty easily. Touch squeeze, McLaughlin probably taking the lead role. P. Ryan plays thirds down, not Javonte Williams. There's just not a lot of room for him to get these yards. So the under 38.5 on Javonte Williams looks good. I did write up the 49ers. They let us get the 49ers at 4 to start the week. That's been bet up to 5.5 or 6. If for some reason it goes back down, I don't think it will. If anything, it'll go back up from here, specifically if Deshaun Watson doesn't play. That looks like still an absolute smash to me. The other one I was on was, of course, the Chargers. I don't know if you talked about them, but I don't know. Are the Cowboys good? They're not good on offense. I know that.
Before the show, as I'm going through my normal prep, I was going through the lines, and 2.5 stood out to me too, man. I mean, betting on the Chargers the last 3 years has been like freaking pulling teeth.
Yeah. I don't want to do it, but it was too.
I don't want to do it either, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Kellen Moore is like the biggest L the Chargers had in the Cowboys had in the offseason. Losing him and giving the reins to Mike McCarthy is just it ain't it in 2023. Tony Pollard's not great anymore. I think that probably has something to do with Kellen Moore, along with getting a bigger workload. It's just not working out for him. The Chargers are at home. They're off a bye. They probably, they don't really have a home field advantage. There'll be more Cowboys fans there than Chargers fans, but they're still off the bye. They get Eckler back. I'm going to back the Chargers. I think this is the first time in a long time I've bet on the Chargers, but I'm going to do it for this week simply because I'm not sure the Cowboys are even like a league average at best offense right now. There's just no fluidity. There's no playmakers. Nothing's happening. I don't know if it's play calling. Dak seems okay, but Pollard's taking a step back. I don't know. I'm on the Chargers this week.
Dak to me seems like a quarterback who needs a run game, and the Cowboys have just had a super inconsistent run game. I figured Dak and the Cowboys would be a little more pass heavy than they have been, but yeah, man, Dak the last couple of years, really ever since that ankle injury, he's just like not been as mobile. I still think Dak is really good, and like he can still play like a top 12 quarterback, but between the inconsistencies in the run game, between new offense, it's not clicking right now. I will say this is an awesome spot for Dallas, though. I mean, Chargers defense was so bad. So I will say we're gonna learn a lot about Dallas this week. Going cross country, playing in San Francisco. San Francisco is amazing at home as a favorite. I'm willing to cut them a little slack. We're gonna learn a lot about Dallas this week, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think both teams here. I think we're gonna learn, and which if this game is decided decisively one way or the other, I think we're going to find out one of these teams is real and one of them might not be. Either way, whether it's the Chargers or the Cowboys, of course, I'm banking on that team, the Chargers being the real team. But those are a couple of bets. Do you guys want to talk any of the fantasy pick'em sites real quick here? Did you get to those while I was gone?
No, that was the only thing we didn't cover while you were gone.
All right, so let's go. Jake, what are you looking at this week on the fantasy pick'em? I was looking at Prize Picks. It looks like you got an underdog play.
Yeah, so I got an underdog 5 pick here. Love Javonte under 12.5 receiving yards. Can also hit the under, of course, on his rushing prop. I mean, Britt already covered it. He's really being squeezed for touches. He's gone under 12.5 rushing yards already in half his games this season. And, coming off the injury, Jaleel McLaughlin stealing a good amount of pass game work. P. Ryan obviously involved in the pass game as well. Very easy to see Javonte hitting his unders. I think that's one of the biggest market misses this week, broadly speaking, is Javonte Williams props are just way too high across the board. And then I got Tyreek Hill over 95.5 receiving yards. I think pretty much any double-digit Tyreek Hill prop, especially outside of the division, is one you're going to want to hit the over on. And then to get a little correlation here, I also added Tua over 282.5 passing yards. I touched on at the beginning of the show how Derek Carr, seemed to be back. He had 6 deep attempts in week 5, which was the third most of any quarterback. And that primarily benefits Chris Olave. Love Olave over 59.5 receiving yards here. Olave is second in air yards, so him going over this prop to me is probably my favorite pick of the week. And then beyond that, I got DeAndre Swift over 64.5 rushing yards. The Jets are just a major run funnel. Swift has been playing great. He's getting fed. So yeah, that rounds out my slip. I feel pretty good about it, I gotta say.
Yeah, a couple I was on Prize Picks. You can still get Javonte at under 38.5. That's just I might change that to a 2-unit bet on Scores and Odds. I just think that's a really good one overall. I'm adding in that we're going to play some of these guys who had big weeks last week, and I think they're going to be in reasonably good spots again. Hopkins is at 58.5, and I saw right before the show Treylon Burks. They hope he can start running this week. Don't think that means he's going to be playing NFL football. So I think Hopkins getting a good amount of target share against the Ravens looks pretty good for him to repeat his performance last week, over 100 yards. I don't think that's too far-fetched when the sports books come out. I did this last week personally. I laddered him all the way up to 100, and that worked out pretty well. Probably going to do that again. Calvin Ridley, I got him at 62.5. He was up to 64.5 right before the show. I think that's still good. The Colts have given up the second most passing yards this year. They, were able to have a pretty good passing performance against the Bills. And I don't know. What's this Zay Jones? Zay Jones, he's day to day. We don't really know. But if he's not remotely close to 100%, even if like 90% Zay Jones is probably a big step down from 100% Zay Jones. And then Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, you can look at Kirk's overs too. I think these are the guys that should benefit quite a bit against the Colts. And then Marquise Brown, 54.5, just too low with the amount of targets he gets every week. Looks to be in a reasonably good spot in a game. Without James Conner, how's Arizona? You got to think the Rams offense with Kupp and Nakua. I mean, they're going to be able to do pretty much whatever they want against Arizona. So I think the Arizona passing game is something I might want to look at. And early in the week, really the only way I could get exposure to that was the Marquise Brown line. So you can find all of those on Prize Picks. And that about rounds it out for me. I just wanted to touch on, make sure you guys talked about, there was something else I wanted to talk about really quick here. Oh, the backup running back situation from DFS between the Bears, Arizona. We've got Jeff Wilson possibly as well here. What do you make of this Bears situation? Do you think Roschon's going to get cleared? He had the concussion. I don't think anyone with a concussion is going to play the week after, except maybe if they played a Thursday game. We're going to find out if that holds true in the NFL. Like if Roschon's in there, are we going to be playing him? He's cheap. And then if he's not, I mean, we're going to be jamming in Dante Foreman, correct?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard not to see a massive workload if Foreman's the only guy back there. And, even if it is Johnson and Foreman, I think the team clearly prefers Johnson at this point. So curious on your thoughts, Graham.
Yeah, it'll be Johnson. And, I'm not sure, honestly, dude. I don't know if it's just Foreman, I think they might play Blasingame a little bit too, man. Like Foreman's just, there's something up there. Like he might be completely dead. Can't forget he popped his Achilles 2 or 3 years ago. And, it's just a matter of time with some of those guys. So I wonder if they play Blasingame. No Travis Homer too. I mean, he probably could have played a couple passing down snaps, but he has I think a severe hamstring injury, it seems like.
And then one other question I had, I don't know if you covered it, so apologies to the listeners if you did, but I wanted to pose, Graham, I'll stick with you on this one. Would you rather play a half game of Tyreek Hill in the absolute absurdity if you could recreate last week, or a full game of Cooper Kupp? at basically close to the same price in DraftKings, because I could not believe what Tyreek Hill did last week from a yards per route run perspective. Just absolutely insane stuff. And what he's doing on the year is something we've never seen. Like, his stats look like a guy who got like 3 catches over the season, just playing sparingly, and one of them happened to be a big play. But he's literally doing it every single time he runs a route. It's insane. And then Cooper Kupp came back. Looks like Cooper Kupp. That offense is going to be purring now. It's against Arizona. Arizona has a little stinginess to them too. I don't know. I might take the Kupp side on this one.
Yeah, I'm on Tyreek. I think I've been on Tyreek every single week when we've posed the question, except for last week when I think I said Jefferson over Tyreek, and then Jefferson got hurt. Kupp, though, man, I mean, he looked like Cooper Kupp just watching the game. I mean, no explosiveness drop off. I was telling Jake, though, 5 of his targets came on that first drive. They basically played off coverage against him, and he just absolutely cooked the defender all 5 times. So they switched it up a little bit, but yeah, Kupp at $9K, man, that's a hefty price tag, with Nakua, still getting a huge role. But yeah, both those guys, man, I mean, they're gonna get fed the ball.
Yeah, Jake, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I think I would lean Tyreek here. I mean, he's just like, he's going to hit 2,000 receiving yards. It's going to happen this year. Looks absolutely unstoppable. Yeah, I'm just going to play Tyreek Hill every week until, I mean, what's his price going to top out at this year? 10.5 probably on DraftKings. It's
not going up fast enough.
No, it's not. He's still too cheap.
Yeah, the receiving yards leader. So I'm holding an AJ Brown ticket at 2,500, and I just need Tyreek to miss a few games, and I'm right there with the Justin Jefferson, with Cooper Kupp going out. I'm right there, but it's really hard if Tyreek Hill stays healthy. I mean, this dude is going to have like the most insane season any receiver's ever had, which is like, he's the most uncoverable wide receiver for sure in the NFL right now. But it's like it's unheard of in the league, where you're trying to take all this stuff away and he's being able to succeed. It's Mike McDaniel. It's a different type of route tree that he's running from 5 years ago, but it's nuts that he's able to do this right now.
Basically, the only comp is Randy Moss. I think that's really the only comp you can make, and that was obviously in the late 90s, early 2000s. So era adjusted, Moss, I think probably his numbers would have been even more insane.
Very different routes those guys are running.
but I mean, that's the thing, though, is like, that's what I'm saying in terms of just outlier type players that just you cannot cover within the context of the scheme. I mean, that's really the only comp I think we can make.
Yeah. All right. So I guess that'll do it. Again, apologies, guys. Sorry for the power outage. I cannot control it. Luckily, they let me back in.
Legendary performance coming back midstream, coming out just like out of nowhere, coming out of the bullpen. That was great.
I thought I was done. But yeah, check the bets out. I've been having a good job with the bets. Get those in. Guys, you should get them in too. I will be out next week. It's vacation. The wife and I were finding out if we're having a boy or a girl. We go on vacation every year around now, so we're going to do a little thing on that. So, but I'll be back for the week 8 show. Not sure who's filling in for me, but Jake and Graham will be here with somebody else. Hopefully they do a great job as well. And you know what? I'll phone in a couple of bets too for you guys. Other than that,
there we go.
Thanks to Jake and Graham for filling in for me while I was MIA. Happy to come back in the middle of the show. Everybody hit a like on the way out if you're watching on YouTube. If not, thanks for watching or listening. And thanks for watching. We got you.